What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Griever back here, your guys' host, as always, bringing you guys the latest behind-the-bar reviews for One Piece. One Piece chapter 949. And before we get underway, because this chapter has quite a bit to talk about, not so much in content, but in story progression and what it means to have a good chapter from a great chapter, from trying to understand the difference between what is a hype chapter and what's actually a great chapter. To put it in perspective, this chapter I thought was great. This is a chapter proving all the naysayers that have been dropping One Piece, who have been claiming they're going to boycott it and blah, blah, blah. You hear a bunch of people do that, but do they do it? No. It's the same with everyone complaining about the self-serve things at McDonald's and your local grocery stores and things like that. Everyone says they don't like them, and then a couple years go by and you start using them. So, it's one of those things. You didn't boycott the store now, did you? So it's the same idea with One Piece here. And I just wanted to talk about the difference because right here off the bat, we see something that just, this chapter does not have any one particular hype moment. There's no Kaido is a dragon. There's no reveal of the Calamity's identity. There's no Shanks showing up. There's no Yonko bounty revealed. There's Marco's not there. There's no big, wow, never knew this. Oh, this person showed up. Oh, wow, we saw this. We don't get any of that in this chapter. You know why? Because hype moments does not a great story make. You can have hype chapters, hype moments. That doesn't make the story good. That doesn't make the chapter necessarily good. It adds to it, of course. It adds to the hype of the chapter, but that's why they're called hype moments. So, because they're reveals. It's not a great moment. Shanks shows up in the next chapter, 950. Doesn't mean the chapter was any good. It's just Shanks showed up and everyone lost their minds. And I love Shanks. Of course, we're all happy. What's Shanks going to do? But if he just shows up in one panel, silhouette, all it does is build hype. It doesn't make it a great moment. It doesn't make it a great chapter. It just is leading into something new. It's the same thing with Seven Deadly Sins right now. Seven Deadly Sins, since chapter 300 on, as I've always talked about in those reviews, and go check them out. If you guys are a Taizai fan, you'll know that even though there have been okay, good, and not really great chapters since chapter 300, the good chapters, like 317, which I toad about all the time, chapter 317, which dropped a few weeks ago, was about Escanor, and it was I said in the review it was a great chapter, but in retrospect, no, it was a hype chapter. It didn't make it a great chapter. It does not forgive all the mistakes in the storytelling. It does not make the arc good. It's the same thing with the end of Bleach. We got Shunsui's Bankai. We got Kisuke's Bankai. We got Kenpachi's Bankai. All the Bankais in the world couldn't make up for the fact that the ending was rushed. There was a lot of plot threads forgotten about. We don't see the fate of a lot of people. There was still a lot of problems, especially with the ending of the arc. Kubo throwing Bankais at us left, right, and center was awesome, was hype moments that we all liked. But does that forgive the storytelling and pacing of the arc? And does it forgive the ending? Of course not. So in the same sense, this is the difference. Kaido a Dragon chapter. I'm not saying it wasn't a bad chapter. I'm saying that this chapter proves this is a great chapter. This chapter showcases character. It showcases something more important than just showing hype, showing bounties, showing Yonko doing something. This showcases something important to storytelling, important to a series. Now, because of Luffy's speech, that was character building, that was something that we know Luffy was capable of this, but it's something we haven't seen in a while, and it was a great chapter as a result. This is part of storytelling. Not every great chapter will have a hype moment, but to tell a great story, you don't build yourself off of hype moments, like Seven Deadly Sins is currently doing, using fan favorites like Escanor and Zeldris just to build momentum to get people keep reading. One Piece doesn't need to do that. So if you aren't satisfied with the current arc of Wano and to this chapter, and you've read it and you still don't like it, then One Piece was never for you. This story was never for you. Because this chapter is so good. Because at the very beginning of the chapter, I'll just jump right in. Color page, it's great. We get the manga cover and stuff, that's nice too. But the color page is awesome. You know, Luffy with the gorilla and the banana and the whole bit, and Nami's there. And I mean, we see the straw hats, it's pretty cool, right? But then we jump right into the chapter, and we're leaving right off. We're not skipping past Udon. No, we're still in Udon prison. We got the 6 of them. They are fighting. We see Chopper. He's like, how dare you? And of course, remember how Chopper feels about diseases, and actually remember as a doctor, as what happened, you know, in his life, but also with Caesar and everything. Remember, Chopper feels very, very strongly resenting people that use poison weapons, any type of poison, any type of bomb, any type of terrorist weapon, or anything like that. He feels very strongly, and so he's like, no, don't, how dare you? And he starts punching people. He's done, right? In his human form. Then we get, you know, Luffy doing the same thing. We see basically everybody attack. We also see Raizo. Raizo drops off the keys. He's got all the keys. Of course, you know, they were kind of stupid about it. They left them all on one ring. And, you know, Raizo throws them to Kid, and we see Killer still laughing. But we see Kid looking down at them, and he goes, hey, friend of Luffy Taro's, or whatever. Or he says, friend of Straw Hats, please use those keys. One of them should unlock your handcuffs and give us a hand, or free yourself, or whatever, he says. And Kid looks down, and he's kind of contemplating. It's like, you know. And I'm glad they're still acknowledging Kid. Kid and Killer are fine. They're out of the water. But Kid's kind of sitting back. He's weighing his options right now. Because Kid has been humbled by what has happened. Not just with Kaido, but now currently with Killer. He's been humbled by this. And you know that he heard Luffy's speech in the later half of the chapter. So I hope that brought Kid around. Because Kid, though he's the more traditional pirate, the pillager, the murderer, all that stuff, very Barbossa, Pirates of the Caribbean 1 crew, that's Kid and his crew. But there is still a certain level of honor, a certain level of he's a pirate, but he also holds pride and respect for what it means to be a great pirate. So there is a certain, you know, like, Kid's not as evil as, I guess, Blackbeard. Let's put it to you that way. He's not exactly a good guy, but I like to think that he's a little better than the next guy. As far as the worst of the worst, you know. Then we see everyone attacking. As I already said, we see everyone attacking and stuff. And this is where it's explained about the plague bullets, the rare disease called mummy. Mummy is the ability that basically, when you get hit with the plague bullet, you start writhing in an unimaginable pain, you get a high fever, you start bleeding out, and you eventually turn into a defiled, like, husk of a form, hence mummy. You can lay down and die. It's not said they're dead, but I can assume from this, they are dead. They are dead as doornails here. Like, they dry up. All basically, what they're trying to explain in PG-13 ratings is that basically all their orifices bleed out to the point that they end up with zero water and zero anything, and they become dried up husks, and they're dead. They're just dead. They're corpses. They're dried out mummy corpses, hence the rare disease called mummy. Put into these plague bullets by Queen, hence Queen the Plague. Once again, thought it had something to do with devil fruit. Feel like Oda could have done something with, like, locusts or something like that. But anyways, that's apparently not the thing. And from this, you know, you can surmise where they're going. But suffice it to say, that's kind of awful. Like, that's actually really creepy and scary. Like, that's disturbing that is their level of punishment and what they do and stuff. And then we see whatever, the elephant head jailer dude. And he's all like, yo, you know, you prisoners, you have to go too. You have to all infect them because, once again, one touch from these guys infects someone. So they can't hit Luffy or any of the other guys, you know, Raizo or any of them, with or Hirogoro with the plague bullets. So they start hitting the prisoners and the people so they can rush them and attack them in just one touch, and they'll get the plague, you know, sort of idea. So that's basically where part one, we get up to that point, and everyone's like, and he's like, you prisoners, you too, or do you want to be punished? Do you want to be smacked down again, sort of idea. And this is where the prisoners also kind of turn against them wholeheartedly because they don't want to be in trouble and stuff. And this is where it's brought up in a nice double spread, saying like it's actually us 6 against all of Udon right now. And here's where, like, that part of the chapter is fine. We get the lead up, we get the build up, that's all fine. But here's where, this is why I talked about the what makes a good chapter, what makes a hype moment, and what makes a great chapter. These are distinctive. You can have a good chapter with no hype moment. You can have a great chapter with no hype moment. And you can have a hype moment chapter that is still good or great. But you can't base everything off a said hype moment. And this moment I wouldn't call hype in the same way that Shanks showed up, Kaido is a dragon, reveal of the calamities, anything like that. I wouldn't put that on the same thing. It's not a hype moment, it's a good moment. It's a great chapter as a result of everything that happens. So it's not just a moment. It's half the chapter. It's the story. It's the storytelling. It's the character. And this is where we jump into part 2 of the chapter, where we get Luffy's speech, and this is where the chapter really starts to take off. Now, in this second part, guys, I normally don't do this. I did this, I believe, last week or the week before. I normally don't read it verbatim from the chapter, but I feel like I don't want to miss a single line of this speech. So I'm actually going to read off of my phone what exactly Luffy's speech was, because what we get is, of course, the prisoners, they are all hyped up, and they're all just like their spirits are so broken, right? Because they blame these 6. It's like, if it wasn't for you guys, if it wasn't for you outsiders, even if you are part of the 9 Red Chiefs, none of that matters. 20 years ago you failed. We can't beat Kaido. We can't beat that dragon. We can't do anything. We already tried. We failed. All you're doing is creating more havoc for us. If none of you had shown up, it just would have been another day in Udon. No problems. And all you guys did was stir shit up. None of that matters to us. None of it's going to make any difference. It's just going to make everything worse for us in the long run, right? So this is where Luffy ends up walking forward, and he grabs Buddy by the face. And then he Gama Gama no arm stretch and holds them all back. The whole crowd. And it's just like, boom. And he's taking the poison, right? And everyone's just like, Kiku's like, no, you cannot do that. And everyone's like, what are you doing? Raizo's shocked. The Scorpion guy, I forget his name, he's shocked as hell. Like, what is this idiot doing? What is going on? And all the prisoners are like, what? What are you doing? And Luffy basically goes up and says, what? Fearsome? Depressing? That type of shit won't work on me. This is nothing to me. And he's hockeyed himself up. It appears anyways. But that doesn't seem to matter too much. I think he's trying to use hockey. It's kind of left ambiguous, but I figure he's trying to use hockey to, hold it back and hold back this plague thing. But it's still affecting him. And he said, this doesn't matter shit. And Chopper's like, no, Luffy, stop bluffing. None of that is actually working on you right now. And he says that the people the samurai he's known, have been strong and fearless. And you guys are basically, your spirits are broken and you're nothing like them, sort of idea. And here's where I want to read verbatim exactly what Luffy says after this point. Because he basically says, we jump into it, he says, so depressing, blah, blah, blah. Then he says, just another day, quoting the prisoners. And he says, just another day. Said, is obeying every command just so you can scrape by on tiny little dumplings just another day to you people? Open your eyes, damn it. You've all become slaves. And he throws them all back. And then we see Tama and Momonosuke, looking over, and they see what Luffy's doing here. And here's where Luffy's speech really takes off, because everyone says, crazy bastard, what are you doing? He goes, so what if I'm from another country? Can an outsider not protect this place? I made a promise in curry with a friend, a little girl named Tama, that she gave me her only meal she had. I told her that I'd make a country into a place where everyone would be able to eat their fill. And, of course, Tama is listening to this. She remembers all this, and because Luffy did promise her that, did say that. And this is where he continues his speech and says, as long as you guys can't even do that, this will always be a living hell, this place. And yes, I've heard the stories of Odin. He really was something else. But 20 years ago, the day that he was killed by Kaido, this country came to a halt. We've come to defeat Kaido. And there's no other reason our own allies should be getting in our way of this. So it's time for you all to decide. Will you side with us, or are you going to side with Kaido? Now, I just wanted to bring all that up because I wanted to read that verbatim, and I changed a little bit to make it a little more. But either way, the point of the matter is that speech, this is a great chapter. That whole speech. That's pages long. It's building up hype. It's building up story. This, to me, is a fantastic chapter, a 10 out of 10 chapter, because all I saw in the comment threads after reading this chapter, all damn day at work, all I saw was a huge long tag of the man who's going to become Pirate King. And people kept posting, the man who's going to become the Pirate King. That's what people posted. 900 and almost 50 chapters of this story. It started with Volume 1, I'm going to become the Pirate King. And here's where the fan base believes him. Believes in Luffy that, well, he is the man who's going to become the Pirate King. We all acknowledge him. He's worthy of that title. If you didn't believe it before, this chapter convinces you now, or it reminds you that this is the man that we've all chosen to follow for 22 years almost. 22 years of the same story we have been following of this one guy looking towards one goal to become the Pirate King, and along the way help as many people as he can. Once again, he helps when he knows about it, and this entire speech and everything to do with it is so sound. He's basically saying like, yeah, okay, fine. You guys, you can all stay down. You can all settle down and stuff. Another day, you guys have become slaves. Admit it. You've lost your pride, you've lost your spirit, you've lost your will to fight. You're not willing to fight because you think there's no chance. You guys are basically being cowards. You're being slaves. Call a spade a spade. You're either a slave, and he puts it very simply. He goes, are you siding with the people who are actually going to fight for this country? The country that you're going to moan and grope about in a prison? Or are you actually going to stand up? So you're on the side of the bad guy. He put it bluntly to shatter them even further in a way and make them realize, like basically a piece of shattering glass in their mind, like by doing nothing, they are literally on Kaido's side, the one who took everything from him. They are part of him. They're part of his dominance over Wano. With just that simple line, the people have realized exactly what this implies, what this means. And Luffy even goes a step further and says, yeah, I heard about Odin. That was 20 years ago. He doesn't say this verbatim because I already read the speech to you guys, but what I took away from it is like, yeah, I heard the stories about Odin. Yeah, that shit's sad, but it was 20 years ago. What have you guys been doing for the last 20 years since then? Yes, your figurehead died. That's sad. It happens. But like even the Whitebeard pirates, Whitebeard died. They still had the payback war. They lost, but at least they still gave it a shot. And we don't know the details of the payback war, of course. But there's a perfect example of Wano basically gave up. Odin died, Orochi took over, and nobody stood up. Or the people that did, I mean, they tried and blah, blah, blah. But these people have been sitting here in this prison since then for 20 years and haven't goddamn given a try. And that's what makes it pathetic. It's like, this country's not worth saving if you guys aren't around. Even after, if I win, you guys will still all be slaves. That's not the point. I have to reawaken your spirit sort of idea. It was so good. What a good speech. Brought everything to the forefront. And it shows Luffy's capabilities as a leader. His capabilities as... Because remember, he always said that his job is not to do all the things of his crew. But the thing is, he is still a captain and he's still a fighter. His job is to fight. And his also job is still to be a captain, still to be a leader, still to be one worthy of the title of Pirate King. And if he can't inspire these people, if he can't basically slap them in the head and go, wake up, this isn't the way you are. This isn't the way of people of Wano are. So what if an outsider wants to help? I have a little girl waiting for me. I made a promise. I'm keeping that damn promise. Ace died, remember, with that promise. He's carrying on his brother's legacy on his back. Luffy may or may not see it that way, but he's continuing on something that Ace promised, and he's also carrying on his own promise to one little girl. And we know the power of one little girl in anime. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, anyone? Like, spoilers warning in 3, 2, 1. The very last episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. What does Edward Elric say? Referencing a little girl from the beginning of the series. None of the other bullshit, none of the other hype, none of the other homunculus, or any of the other shit that happens to war. Nothing matters. At the end of the day, he can't save one little girl. That's all he cared about. We don't see references to that throughout the entire series. But when push came to shove, when the end of the series was folding, and he realized that this was the ultimate thing, he realized that he told the truth, and he said, look, I couldn't even save her, so what's the point? You know, in a very heroic way, in a very humbling way, not in a giving up way, but in a, doesn't matter how strong I get, I still couldn't save her, and I can't bring her back. So all I am at the end of the day is a human who has the choice. So this is incredible. It's amazing. And we'll move on to the last little part of the chapter so I can reread it. But I just wanted to really bring this to the forefront for you guys. I brought it up at the beginning of this review, talking about the difference between hype moments and a good chapter. And once again, this is not a hype moment. This is what makes a chapter. This is what makes a story. This is bigger than the chapter itself. It's not standalone. Yes, it's a chapter, but it brings so much to the arc, to the overall story and the story arc as a whole. That is the point of a great chapter. A great chapter progresses the story in such a way. It's hard to explain like ABC in 3 points, how to differentiate between a great chapter and a good chapter and a hype moment and blah blah blah. But there are key signs, and I've ranted on long enough about all this. But I hope you agree. If you don't, post in the comment section down below as to why this isn't a great chapter, or why hype moments make a better chapter, or etc., whatever you guys think. We're going to continue on here to the last little part of the chapter. Now this is where it gets a little dark, honestly. Is Babanuki dead? Like, seriously? Because that blew his head clean off as far as I'm concerned. If it didn't, that's ridiculous. Because what basically ends up happening is that the prisoners actually relent. Hirogoro even says, like, this young man, this young straw hat, he's got them. He's clung to their spirit. He's clung to their hearts. He's pulled them from that despair. And he's got them, right? And this is because the prisoners stop and look at him and say, yo, even now, you're willing to give us a second chance? Like, because remember, they failed 20 years ago. They've been fighting them this whole time, resisting them. And now, even after burning him and causing Luffy with all the plague, which is still on Luffy, he looks and he goes, like, it's like, you're still willing? Like, if we say yes right now, you'll accept us, you know? And you can see the tearful eyes of some of the prisoners. Now, this is where Babanuki loads up this 200-bullet thing in his elephant trunk, like, I think I'm so great. Dude, you're another Hold'em. Get over yourself. We thought Hold'em would be cool. He wasn't. We thought Babanuki would be cool. He wasn't. Put it to you this way. Smiles, most of the time, are not cool. They make dorky-looking characters who are fodderized. They might as well just be minions. They're always fodderized. I don't see a smile usually being a calamity. So, either way, he loads this thing up, and he's going to fire it, and everyone's like Kappa notices, and everybody notices, and they're like, oh, we got to stop him and stuff. Fire that into the middle of the crowd. It'll cause devastation. We'll break their spirits all over again. He goes, too late, ha, ha, ha. And then Luffy grabs the trunk, and he's just like, I just saw a pretty bad future right now. Boom! Blows up Babanuki. Babanuki's head, his humanoid form is blown to smithereens. You can't convince me that this plague bullet, even if it didn't actually blow him up, like literally incinerate the top half of his body, which looks like, if it didn't do that, this is still 200 plague bullets. Can't convince me that it's affecting people like Luffy and it wouldn't affect Babanuki. He's going to be mummified either way. If he's not dead, he's mummified. Luffy just straight up capped a bitch. Like, willingly. Just boom. That's all he did. And it was awesome. We see now that Luffy definitely does have, he's able to use the same level of observation haki to an extent, or on the same tier anyways, as Katakuri by the seeing into the future thing. Luffy affected that, then he looks, and then we see Luffy's battered and beaten. That plague's still affecting him, so Chopper's going to have to do some first aid shit, real quick. I think that's why they brought Chopper in. Oda's not stupid. He brought someone in that could probably help Luffy, who is, of course, Chopper, the doctor of the crew. And we see that he basically points at the prisoners and said, all right, you guys clean up. Then we see the Scorpion guy, forget his name, looks cool, whatever. He's like, stand back, you know the first punishment, blah, blah, blah. And the prisoner's like, yeah, no. After seeing that, after hearing his words, we don't care. Yeah, and they literally say that. They say, we don't care. And they're done. Prisoners are now all on their side. Udon's been taken over. Kappa's like, Kawamatsu's like, what a dependable young man. And Hirogoro's like, yes, Udon is ours now. And the text boxes say, yeah, so the enemies didn't even realize it, but Udon was already in the hands of the rebellion. So they have taken over all of Udon, and we didn't even need or see any of the other 4 Yakuza bosses, or 5. I forget how many there are. Once again, I believe Hirogoro of the Flowers was literally the boss of the capital, right? He was part of the capital, but there are 5 other regions, and then the flower capital sort of idea stands on its own. I might be wrong about that, so there's either 5 more bosses or 4 more bosses. Either way, Hirogoro was basically the godfather of all the bosses, sort of idea. That's the way I took it. Anyways, so we're still going to have to go along, find all these bosses and stuff. It's going to be great. I don't know what Chapter 950 holds. I feel like because of the text bubbles, that's like 8 days remain, and thus blah, blah, blah. So we're definitely going to jump away from Udon. We're not going to see Udon again for probably for another month. Probably 4 or 5 chapters at least. So who we're going to jump to next, I'm not really sure. I'm excited to see. I think we're going to see Zoro back. I think we're going to follow Zoro and his crew for a little while now. We might jump into a little bit of a jump of Big Mom and Kaido interaction, and I hope we do. But either way, I don't think we're going back to Udon anytime soon. What do you guys think? That's the chapter. That's the end of the review. What do you guys think of the chapter? What do you think of the review? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, it's always very much appreciated. This has been Griever with your Behind the Bar reviews for One Piece, chapter 949, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I thought it was a great chapter, and if you still are having doubts about Wano after this chapter, then I just don't think One Piece is for you anymore. If you liked it back in the day, it's no different now. It's just a longer running story, I don't know really how to say it any clearer. This is One Piece, and this is still great. So, that being said, guys, drink responsibly. See you next time.